Welcome to another in our 30th anniversary series of interviews here at the Festival of the Sound in Parry Sound, Ontario, Canada. My name's Keith Horner. And today we have Marc Johnson, formerly with the Vermeer String Quartet, and Jerzy Kaplanek, who's with the Penderecki String Quartet. Would you please welcome them to the Festival of the Sound? Together, Marc and Jerzy have played string quartets professionally for pretty well 7 decades. That's a lot of concerts and a lot of accumulated wisdom. And this evening they've agreed to share some of this experience and a career spent playing string quartets with us. Marc was with the Vermeer String Quartet. He joined shortly after they began. That was back in 1969. And the Vermeer played its last concert just about 2 years ago now, just over 2 years ago, in New York. And Jerzy has been with Jerzy was almost a founding member of the Penderecki String Quartet. He joined in year 2. And the Penderecki have been residents here in Canada at Wilfrid Laurier University for the past 16 seasons. So welcome again. Can we talk about early days first, about the founding of the quartets? What were the circumstances that led to the Vermeer being founded, Marc?
Rather easy to explain. The chairman of the music department at Northern Illinois University wanted to have a string quartet in residence, and he wanted to have the fun of forming a new quartet rather than hiring an existing quartet. And so he spent himself about a year searching out a first violinist. And he went all over the country, and in fact all over the world, listening to violinists play, and he made himself a short list and brought about 5 different people to campus to interview, and he wound up choosing my longtime colleague Shmuel Ashkenazi as the first violinist of this new and as yet unnamed quartet, and gave him really completely carte blanche to form a quartet. And so Shmuel chose a second, and the 2 of them chose a third, and the 3 of them chose a fourth, and that was how the quartet began. As it turns out, the 4 original members had all been friends and colleagues at the Marlborough Festival in Vermont. And so that's, in addition to Northern Illinois University, the Marlborough Festival is sort of the second birthplace of the Vermeer Quartet.
Thanks. And Jerzy, why was the Penderecki formed?
Yes, at first, all the members of the quartet, they were students at the Academy of Music in Katowice. They were all Polish. I wasn't one of them. And they were taking chamber music for credit, and they loved it so much that they started to play concerts outside of the school. And in 1986, they were part of the competition in chamber music competition in Łódź, where they received a special award, where they received the first prize, but also they received the special award from Maestro Penderecki for performing his second string quartet. And at this point, the group was already having some professional engagements and so on, and the group didn't have a name. So somebody came up with the idea of asking Maestro Penderecki for permission to use the name, his name as name of the quartet, which he agreed to. And then at that point, the quartet went and played for him and worked with him on his pieces. And as a result of those concerts, the quartet received a scholarship in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to study with Fine Arts Quartet, good colleagues of yours, right?
Yes.
So it was a long-term investment in the name that really paid off. It was a wise investment. And you could also ask Mr. Penderecki for his permission. Now, you couldn't ask Vermeer his permission.
No.
How did the Vermeer name come about?
Well, of course, I was not a founding member, but as I understand it, first of all, there was some pressure to find a name very quickly, which is exactly the situation that you were in. And my colleagues, they didn't want, first of all, to choose the name of a composer like Penderecki, because they didn't want to be pigeonholed, to be sort of associated with that name forever. And there's some sense in that. I mean, I pity the poor Janacek Quartet who had to play those two pieces, and nobody wanted to hear them play anything else. And as wonderfully as they played them, it became a burden to them to be named after a composer. I assume that you didn't have this problem. We didn't want to be named after a geographical location. The Tokyo Quartet wound up in New York. The Cleveland Quartet wound up in Rochester. I mean, it's not very safe to name yourself after a city. And finally, someone said, why does it have to be specifically musical or geographic? Why can't it be something else in the arts? And someone said Rembrandt, and it didn't sound right. And someone else said Vermeer, and it did. And I think it worked rather well for us. It was at that time unusual, but not difficult to remember. And since that time, there have been a number of, we consider it that we were trailblazers in naming ourselves after a painter. And there's a Miro Quartet, and there's a Cassatt Quartet, and there are any number of quartets who now have chosen this path. And I think it's a fairly good one, and maybe a fairly safe one, that you can go ahead and make your own career and your own personality without having been tagged by your name.
Yeah, I think names used to be very often either, as you said, composers, or a musical name like the Allegri Quartet, we've had at the festival many times, or a musical association, I guess, like the Amadeus Quartet. Jerzy, what did you see your core repertory as? You know, in other words, what was the quartet formed to play?
Well, the quartet wanted to play all repertoire, and of course, starting with the heart of string quartet repertoire with Haydn's and Beethoven's and Bartók's. But we always were interested to try contemporary pieces. We were always trying to commission new works, and we're always trying to work with the composers. And that's how this whole idea started, with naming the quartet as Penderecki Quartet, which actually, once you said that, it reminded me how difficult at first was to communicate to sponsors and to chamber music societies which were inviting us to play, to communicate to them that actually, yes, we are playing Beethoven, we are playing Haydn.
I thought of you for many years as a new music quartet.
That's exactly
primarily.
right. Yes. Many people would perceive us this way, and it was difficult to change.